imagine mastering something like you're at the top of your game,
Right.
right? And then you decide, you know what? I'm going in a totally different direction. Not because what I was doing was wrong or anything, but because I found something even better. And that's kind of the story we're diving into today with Virginie and her work in conversational hypnosis.
Now, Imir is a super experienced trainer in conversational hypnosis, and she noticed something interesting in her work. She was spending a lot of time on hypnotic induction, like getting clients into that relaxed trance state, and it was taking away from actual therapy time, like meticulously setting the table for a big meal and then realizing, oh, I'm out of time to actually enjoy the food.
Right, right.
But, and this is where it gets really wild, she started to see clients having breakthroughs before the formal hypnosis even started. Like just in those initial conversations, just sharing, connecting. That's when big shifts were happening.
Wow.
And I found this really fascinating because early in her career, someone, a mentor, had actually suggested this: do the therapy first. And she's admitted that she kind of dismissed it. It seemed counterintuitive, right? Like, how could you have these deep changes without formal hypnosis techniques? But her own experiences were making her rethink that.
Yeah, totally. And what's so interesting is how this kind of throws a wrench in the traditional hypnosis model where, it's all about getting that deep trance. It's like planning a relaxing vacation to a beautiful beach, but then you bring all your work stress with you.
You're there, but you're not really present.
Exactly. Imir found that by focusing on therapeutic conversation right away, what she calls untying knots, that actually led to better results. It's like addressing those mental blocks, the emotional baggage, before bringing in the formal hypnotic stuff. Imagine like a beautiful tapestry, but it's all tangled up in knots. You can't really see the picture, right?
Right. You just see a mess of threads.
Exactly. So you have to untangle those knots, and then the picture emerges naturally, beautifully.
Right. So she's having these deep conversations, untying those knots, but what leads to the aha moment? What's actually happening in those conversations?
Well, this is where Imir's really good at what she does. She's not just listening passively, but she's really listening for those unconscious moments, she calls them. Little slips of the tongue, metaphors that pop up, moments where, like, deeper truth just bubbles up to the surface.
So it's like the unconscious mind is sending up a message in a bottle, and she's there on the shore to catch it.
Yes. And she gives an example. She had this client struggling with a career change. He kept saying he felt like he was drowning in his current job.
Oh, wow.
Right? Sounds simple, but that metaphor, that revealed this deeper fear he had, a fear of being overwhelmed, not being able to handle change. And it went way beyond just his job.
It was about more than just the job.
Yes. And by dealing with that underlying fear, he was actually able to approach that job change in a totally new way, with confidence.
Okay, let's unpack this untying knots approach a bit more. Can you give us like a concrete example of what a knot might be and how Imir would help someone untie it?
Okay, so imagine a client who's stuck, right? Like they keep self-sabotaging at work, in relationships, whatever it is.
Yeah, been there. So that pattern, that's the knot, right?
Exactly. Imir might start by, talking with the client about their experiences, gently digging a bit, looking for thought patterns, beliefs, maybe even stuff from their childhood that might be feeding this whole self-sabotage thing.
Yeah, the therapist detective searching for clues?
Yes. And often they'll uncover a limiting belief, something like, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to be successful. Maybe it started way back in childhood, and now it's running the show without them even realizing it.
Because if you don't think you deserve success, you're going to find a way to mess things up, right? It's like you're trying to prove yourself right, even if it hurts.
Exactly. But once you shine a light on that belief, once it's out in the open, it loses its grip. The client can start to question it, challenge it, and eventually replace it with something healthier.
So untying that knot of the belief is what lets them actually break the pattern.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really cool. Remember how Imir's clients would just slip into a trance naturally?
Yeah.
She realized that by focusing on this untying knots process first, the client's unconscious mind was actually more ready for change. Trance would just kind of happen, like a side effect of the therapy itself.
Wow. So it's like by clearing out the mental and emotional clutter, the unconscious mind is more open, more receptive.
Yes. And people describe this byproduct trance, as she calls it, as being different, deeper, even more profound than when it's induced the traditional way. It's like the unconscious mind has let go of some of its baggage, and now it can access its own wisdom, its own healing power.
That makes sense. So untying knots, things open up, you've got this byproduct trance happening. What kind of real-world results was Imir seeing?
Well, get this. Clients were having big transformations and fast, sometimes even in just one session.
Seriously,
That
in one session?
It's amazing, right? Of course, everyone is different and there's no magic bullet. But think about it. By addressing those deep-seated blocks right off the bat, her clients could tap into their own potential much faster. They were able to make lasting changes more efficiently.
So it's not about a quick fix, but about clearing the path, removing the roadblocks that keep us from healing and growing.
Exactly. It challenges that whole idea that change has to be this long, painful process. Sometimes the most powerful thing is to just get out of our own way, to make space for things to unfold naturally.
Wow, this is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about personal growth. The whole untying knots thing is really resonating with me. It seems like that's such a crucial step in creating change that lasts.
Absolutely. It's like when you clean out a really cluttered room, you can finally see the beauty of the space, the potential that was hidden underneath.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've talked about Imir's approach, what she observed, the whole byproduct trance, and the amazing results she was getting. But this isn't just about hypnosis, is it? What can people listening, even if they're not hypnotists themselves, take away from all of this? It seems like what's so powerful about her approach is that it's all about self-awareness, right? Like taking the time to really figure out what those knots are, those beliefs or patterns that are holding us back, even if we don't even realize it.
Exactly. And it's not about beating ourselves up for having those knots. We all have them. A lot of times they come from childhood, or just stuff we've gone through in life. The important thing is to just become aware of them so we can start to untangle them.
Yeah, it's like we've been driving around with the parking brake on this whole time, and Imer's work is that little nudge to remind us to release it and finally move forward. So, how do we actually apply this stuff in our own lives, even if we're not, hypnotists or anything?
It's a great question. One way is to just get curious about ourselves. When you notice yourself feeling stuck or repeating the same negative patterns, don't judge yourself. Just get curious. Ask
Yeah.
yourself, what's the belief or fear that's driving this? What am I holding on to that's not helping me anymore?
So it's about becoming like an observer of our own minds, paying attention to those thoughts and patterns without judgment, like our own inner detective.
Exactly. And journaling can be really helpful for this.
Mm.
Just getting your thoughts and feelings down on paper can help bring those unconscious patterns to the surface.
It's like those unconscious moments she talked about, but instead of in conversation, we're letting them come out on the page.
Precisely. And once you're more aware of those patterns, then you can start to challenge them and even change them.
Right. Like if the belief is I'm not good enough, maybe you start looking for proof that that's not true. Like all the times you succeeded, your strengths, all that.
Yes, exactly. You start choosing a different story, a more empowering one.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. I love how it challenges that idea that change has to be hard and take forever. Imir's work really shows us that we all have this incredible power within us to grow and change. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just get out of our own way, untie those knots, and just let that transformation happen.
Beautifully put. And as we wrap up, here's something to think about. What if the real key to unlocking our potential isn't about forcing change, but about creating the space for it to just blossom from within?
That is a powerful thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep those conversations flowing.